speaker will stand, yeah.
Where do you want? Second.
Well, speaker here.
Yeah,
You can stand right here. Sam,
Yes, ma'am.
stand right here. It's fine. I'm just thankful they have air conditioning
Yeah.
here.
You want to do this outside? We can.
Holy mastacholi. Get in. You good? Well, good morning, everybody. So good to see you. I want to start by continuing to offer my prayers for the safety and security of our service members and all Americans in the Middle East. God bless them and God bless our troops who are keeping us safe. Now, over the weekend, President Trump delivered peace through strength. Operation Midnight Hammer was not only a historic and successful mission, it was a message to Iran, a message that resonates for years, if not decades to come. Iran will never be allowed to attain a nuclear weapon. And if Iran continues to try to go down this path, prepare to face the full fury and wrath of American firepower. Because of President Trump's decisive action, the world is a safer place. And let me be clear, America is safer, Israel is safer, and our allies are safer. And like President Vance said, we are not at war with Iran. We are at war with Iran's nuclear program. The war against their nuclear program is already paying off. And thank you to President Trump for his decisive action again. Peace through strength is working. Now, switching gears, let me say this. The American people are waiting. They want to know with certainty that their taxes won't increase $5,000 next year. They want to know that violent, illegal immigrants are not in their communities anymore. But they don't have it yet, because unfortunately, they're still waiting for the one big, beautiful act. And each day that goes by is another day that Americans don't have the certainty that they deserve. Whether you're a small business owner, a senior on Social Security, a tipped service worker, or a first responder working overtime to protect our communities, the one big, beautiful bill helps you. Americans should not have to wait any longer. There's no time to waste. Let's get this done. Let's send this bill to President Trump's desk so it can become law. Now, here with me today is a fellow Michigander. He's a real person with a real story, waiting for the one big, beautiful bill to become law. Sam Palmetter is the President of Engineering and New Product Development at Laser Marketing Technologies in my home district of Carroll, Michigan. There are leaders in laser marketing and engraving technology, and I'll let Sam speak more to this, but they are eagerly awaiting for the immediate expensing for research and development so that they can continue being a leader in innovation right here in the United States of America. And now, without further ado, I will turn it over to my constituent and my friend, Sam.
Yeah, I don't need that box. Good morning. I'm not quite that tall, but I don't need that. So just real quick, Lisa has been such a spitfire for us in our district, not just during an election campaign year. She's in our factories, in our offices, year after year, checking on us, seeing what we need in our areas, and we can't appreciate her more. In all honesty, this lady doesn't need to do this, and she's doing it from her heart, and I can't thank her enough for what she's doing personally to really help manufacturing in America. So with that, let me get on track here for y'all, right? So thank you to House Republican leadership, including my Congresswoman, the awesome Chairman, Lisa McClain, for this opportunity to share the reason the big, beautiful bill needs to be signed into law. As the founder of Laser Marketing Technologies over 20 years ago, and as a lifelong resident of Michigan, a manufacturing state, I've seen firsthand the demise of the manufacturing sector in America and good paying manufacturing jobs. It has slowly been outsourced to other countries that have taken advantage of the U.S. My company is one of the last 2 laser technology companies fully owned and operated in America. We had a third competitor from Ohio that tried to hang on but went bankrupt and was subsequently purchased last year by a foreign entity. Now think about that, right? These are the guys, we're the ones that are in the background supplying a lot for the Department of Defense, other items that are critical to our sovereignty. And this is going to foreign actors that own it. So this is what's happening to America. Our manufacturing IP is being bled off to other countries. It needs to stop now, before we don't have the manufacturing and intellectual property to build what is needed for our military and other vital industries. So with that, the following items in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that really matter to me and many other small business owners, not just in Michigan, but throughout the U.S., are the permanent increase of the qualified business income deduction to keep our taxes low and competitive on a global scale, not just in the U.S., but we are competing against everybody else. So why is our taxes so much higher than other countries? No tax and overtime was great for my employees. Just imagine if you're in trades, right? You're a trades person and you work an extra 20 hours and you get your check and you look at it. You guys ever go through this, anybody? Maybe not, but if you're in trades or anything like that, even if you work at a grocery store and you see that overtime, you think you're gonna bring that in, and it's half of what you thought it was gonna be because somebody else got your money, it didn't go in your pocket and it never will. Let's change that, right? That's part of this big, beautiful bill. That's really, really phenomenal, and that should really resonate with everybody that's actually working with their hands, right? People that serve you food, everything. Specialty deduction allowance for qualified production property. This will allow us to invest into the future and will immediately allow us to double our manufacturing space. So instead of expensing this off across 40 years, I'll be 90 years old by then, right? What's that gonna matter to me? But if I can expense our manufacturing additions and new buildings that we need to build so we can supply the machinery for the US, we can do that and immediately write that off. And that means something because that puts it back in and we put it right back into our local economy. What is that saying? High tide rises all boats. That's what this is about, right? We do this. It's not trickle down economics or whatever, which I have nothing against, but let's think about it, right? If we are putting this money back into the US manufacturing, where tradespeople are building these buildings and then qualified, good paying jobs for workers. So the One Big Beautiful Act encourages American businesses to create new things in the US to get our economy back on track. This bill incentivizes us to create new jobs in the US, and we are incentivized to manufacture in the USA. And with this new law, we will continue to do this, but at a much, much faster rate. I'm excited to keep making it in America for America.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great job. The One Big Beautiful Bill is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver real-life results to the American people, as you just heard from Sam. From energy producers in Louisiana to police officers in Minnesota, this landmark legislation truly holds promise for every single American. Today's guests are a testament to that. I'm proud to welcome James Stewart to speak this morning on the impact of the One Big Beautiful Bill that it will have on law enforcement officers in Minnesota and across America. With more than 30 years of frontline experience, Sheriff Stewart is here today on behalf of the Minnesota Sheriff's Association to represent the men and women who sacrifice their safety, comfort, and time to keep us all safe. Some even make the ultimate sacrifice with their lives. President Trump and House Republicans stand with our nation's brave law enforcement officers. The One Big Beautiful Bill makes clear that we don't just do so with words, but with our actions. President Trump campaigned on no tax on overtime, and now we're following through on that promise. To the benefit of our men and women in blue, by the way, and their families. And I thank the President for his vision of a prosperous America that truly appreciates and honors the bravest among us. With that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Stewart from Minnesota's 6th Congressional District.
Well, thank you, Congressman Emmer, for inviting me to speak this morning and for your leadership. My name is James Stewart. I'm the Executive Director and CEO for the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, a former Vice President for the National Sheriff's Association, and retired Sheriff of Anoka County, located in Minnesota's 6th Congressional District. After more than 30 years in law enforcement, I know the sacrifice that is required to carry out the mission of protecting our communities. The sacrifice of late nights, weekends, and holidays away from the dinner table and special events with your family. Early mornings out the door before your children even wake up, and the mental toll of routinely encountering scenes that no human should ever have to witness. And the ultimate sacrifice some officers make with their life in exchange for a safer tomorrow for the people that they proudly serve and protect. Law enforcement officers sometimes work 100+ hours per pay period. And not only is that time spent away from their family and their friends, it is more time in the line of duty, putting their lives at risk. No tax and overtime pay would benefit our protectors all across the country in tremendous ways. The increase in take-home pay for these deputies and officers rewards the extra hours and the extra efforts that they devote to protecting their communities, impacting their own lives in significant ways. That is more money in their pockets to save, to invest, and to grow. With more net pay, our protectors could reduce financial burdens and ultimately the related stresses and rely less on second jobs and better focus on serving others in their demanding roles. But no tax and overtime won't just lead to a bigger paycheck. Law enforcement agencies across America right now are facing staffing shortages and struggle with recruitment and retention like never before. No tax and overtime would help keep seasoned officers on the force longer and decrease that turnover. The One Big Beautiful Bill passed by the House is the opportunity to honor our men and women in blue and reinforce the vital role that they play in our communities. The no tax and overtime pay policy is a clear message of respect and support to our nation's law enforcement officers, and the impact of this legislation cannot be understated. Our protectors across America want to see this change, and you all have the power to make it happen. I commend House Republicans for the work that they've done thus far to move this policy closer to the finish line, and I ask on behalf of peace officers across Minnesota and our entire nation that you continue full steam ahead in that work. For the moms missing dinner with their families tonight, and for the sons missing their birthdays for their families this weekend, and for the men and women in blue putting their lives on the line day after day and hour after hour, let's make this happen. Thank you.
Well, over the weekend, we saw President Trump take strong and decisive action to ensure that Iran does not any longer have a nuclear weapons program. Not only did the president work with our allies in the region, of course, working very closely with Israel, but the president defended America. Again, let's not forget, the Ayatollah and many others in his leadership structure have been chanting death to America for years as they tried to get a nuclear weapon under previous presidents who let this build and build for decades, and the world knew one day it had to be confronted. But the president didn't just take that strong and decisive action. Under the War Powers Resolution, in compliance with that law, he notified Congress within 48 hours of the actions that were taken. And hopefully that's as far as it's going to go. The president announced yesterday that there is now a ceasefire. Again, peace through strength, they're not just words. They have to be actions that a president of the United States who's strong and bold and decisive is willing to take those steps to keep America safe. And I think most people in the civilized world know that a nuclear-armed Iran is not just bad for America, but it's bad for other countries all around the world. Now, we've got another busy week here in Washington. Today, we're going to be debating the resolution to condemn the political violence in Minnesota. I think you'll see a very strong bipartisan message being sent by Congress that political violence is never acceptable. And you see the actions over the weekend with the state representative and her husband who were brutally murdered, the senator who was nearly killed. We keep all of them in our prayers and their families. But we know that justice will prevail, and ultimately in America, we need to be united when we say that political violence is never the answer. We're going to also bring more legislation to protect Americans from illegals who come here and commit violence against our constituents. Somebody gets a DUI here while they're here illegally. And I saw this in my own district where you had an illegal who came about 8 times the legal limit and murdered an 18-year-old girl and her boyfriend. And he was fine, but they are no longer with us. And we see this every day in communities all across the country. We've given President Trump some tools in law, like the Lake and Riley Act, to keep us safe from people who come here illegally and commit violent acts against our citizens. This will be one more of those tools. And of course, Friday, we're going to have a vote to stand up for our ICE agents and for law enforcement in Los Angeles and other communities who are trying to keep us safe in the face of these violent riots, like the LA riots that you're seeing. That will be Friday. Of course, the overarching focus has been on the one big beautiful bill. The Senate finally has the legislation. They're moving forward. We've continued up here to talk about so many great things that this will do to get our economy back on track, to put more money in the pockets of hardworking families through so many provisions like certainty in the tax code, ensuring that you don't have a massive tax increase that would hit lower and middle income families. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, the ability to have bonus depreciation, some of the other things that would bring investment into this country. But we also have so many other provisions. Border security, of course, is one, but energy security is a big component of this bill to allow America to continue producing more oil so we don't have to be dependent on foreign countries. So world markets aren't worried about an action Iran might take. When you saw them talking about shutting off the Strait of Hormuz, you really didn't see much of a change in oil prices because America and our allies can now pick up the slack because you have a President, Donald Trump, who wants to open up more American energy opportunities. And so do our friends around the world. And in this bill, we have a number of provisions to do that. But rather than me talk about those provisions, and I love the great work that South Louisiana is involved in so many different fronts at producing energy for the rest of the country and the world, but I am proud to have one of my constituents, Paul Danos, whose family for 3 generations has been involved in the energy industry. He knows just what it takes to produce American energy and the challenges that can be posed if Congress and the White House don't get it right, and what opportunities we have ahead for our country if we do get it right. That great leader is my friend, Paul Danos.
Thank you, Leader Scalise, for having me here today for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Danos. I am CEO and one of the owners of Danos. We are a 78-year-old, third-generation family-owned and managed energy services firm headquartered down in Southeast Louisiana. We provide frontline workforce that enable companies to explore, produce, and develop the energy in the Gulf of America. I'm honored to share with you the positive impact that this bill will have on family-run businesses in our areas and our employees around the country, and how critical this bill is for American energy dominance. I'm honored to represent so many hardworking people that provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy to our country. My grandfather, Alan Danos Sr., he took a risk. He had a dream in 1947 to create jobs for his community, prosperity for his community, and security for our nation. But during the previous administration, that sort of innovation and spirit was stifled. Oil and gas leases were canceled, they were nullified, and altogether stopped. This bill is a lifeline for American energy and restores the kind of predictability that businesses like ours need to invest and to grow. Predictability keeps capital flowing, and when capital flows, companies like Danos can invest in equipment and jobs and people and technology at home. You see, offshore projects take years to build. They're multi-billion-dollar investments, and without clarity and consistency with lease sales, businesses can't make the long-term investment decisions that are needed to grow their workforce and acquire equipment. So when lease sales stall or disappear, that doesn't just cause a pause in our business. Those opportunities can vanish. So when that happens, good paying jobs across the Gulf Coast and really around the country, because the supply chain throughout the country supports our energy in the Gulf of America. And that American energy and security is jeopardized. So this bill will help to restore American energy dominance. It'll make everyday goods less expensive, and it'll create jobs to secure America's energy future. And we know that energy security is national security. The more energy we can produce at home, the more that we can help our allies abroad to make sure that they aren't relying on hostile nations to get their energy. The Gulf of America is critical to America's energy economy and security. When Congress gets energy policy right, companies like Danos can do what we do best, deliver safe, reliable, affordable American energy. So I want to thank the Congress and President Trump for making good energy policy a priority in this legislation. Now I will turn it over to Tony McAllister.
Speak real quick. Yeah. Great job. Paul, I know you're the CEO, but I get to control the podium. All right, no, that's all good.
They told me something different.
No, it's so great. What a great collection of Americans here. We wanted to come this morning. I have a lot of updates for you, and I'll get to it in a moment, but I want to continue with this theme real quick because the big, beautiful bill is so important, literally to every sector of the U.S. economy. And we could have chosen, constituents of ours from any sector in the economy, but it occurs to me we chose just the letter L as our theme today, okay? You heard about lasers and law enforcement and liquefied natural gas. And now we're going to go to logging, because I brought Tony McAllister here, and she is a small business owner. She's going to talk to you about what it would mean to them. She's also a mother, and she's the wife of one of our greatest sheriffs in the state of Louisiana. They hail from Wynn Parish. The sheriff's standing in the back. He's the big guy with the badge. You can't miss him. But I'm so grateful that Tony is here with us. Now I'll turn it over to you. How about that? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for having me today. So my name is Tony McAllister. I'm a proud resident of rural Louisiana in the 4th Congressional District. I am a Louisiana logger. I'm a mom, I'm a wife of a Louisiana sheriff, and as a logger for years, small businesses like ours, with our team of 30 hardworking employees, have carried the weight of this governmental system that often seems to grow on the backs of small businesses and middle-class families like mine. It's been tough, it's been challenging to compete and to grow and to simply get a fair chance to thrive right here in the U.S. But today I'm filled with gratitude. I am thankful to President Trump and the House Republican leadership who have made it a priority to reset this system, to put hardworking Americans first, to support the businesses and the families who are the backbone of this great nation. When the One Big Beautiful Bill is signed into law, it will finally give small businesses like ours a better opportunity to not just to survive, but to grow and to succeed. Some of these have been mentioned already, but just as a reminder, this legislation will lower the effective tax rate for producing in America, increase and make permanent the small business deduction, double immediate small business expensing, and reduce reporting burdens for small businesses. In Louisiana, timber is not just what we do, it's who we are. It's the largest agricultural product in the state, and it is vital to the survival of so many rural communities across our state and across the South. This bill recognizes this impact of small businesses just like mine. It protects us, it strengthens us. For far too long, the U.S. has been one of the largest importers of raw pulp, pulpwood, and timber products. This has led to the shutdown of many mills and the loss of way too many American jobs. So I want to personally thank the President for continuing to fight to reduce unregulated imports from other countries and for standing firm to support American-made products by American workers. Another piece of this bill that hits even closer to home is the historic investment in our border security. This will protect our communities and support our law enforcement officers and agencies by keeping dangerous illegals out of our country. As a wife of a Louisiana sheriff, knowing that this administration is working hard to stand behind law enforcement gives me a peace of mind. It empowers our officers, federal, state, and local, to do their jobs because they know they have the backing of this administration and the Republicans in Congress. It means the world to me to see the leaders who value the safety, well-being, and dedication to those who put their lives on the line for us every single day. The One Big Beautiful Bill is more than policy, it's progress. It's progress for small business owners, for working families, for rural communities, and for our law enforcement. Again, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for having me. Thank you to the President for seeing us. Thank you for standing with us. Thank you to the House Republicans for working hard to get this done, not just for today, but for future generations. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It is about progress, Tony. That's so well said. And I'm so grateful for these fine Americans who stood here representing hundreds of millions of Americans in all their various endeavors. And this bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill, is geared for those hardworking Americans. It is going to help all boats rise. And we are so excited to get this thing over the line. And I'll give you more updates on that. In the meantime, Tony and Paul and Sam and Sheriff Stewart, thank you again for your time this morning. Let me zoom out. We'll just talk about foreign affairs quickly, and then we'll zoom back in on the big, beautiful bill. I know the conflict in the Middle East is top of mind for everyone, and it is for us as well. Over the weekend, of course, President Trump fulfilled what was a bipartisan, long-standing national security priority by carrying out successful strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Everyone around the world applauded this expertly performed duty by our extraordinary unmatched military. Some of them applauded loudly and openly, and some of them quietly, but everybody except the evil regime in Iran knows this was the right thing to do. It's important to remember who we're discussing here, okay? Evil is the right word. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth. The Iranian regime has been responsible for thousands of American deaths over the years, an untold number of maimings with roadside bombs all over the Middle East. They have funded and propped up terror proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and their stated goal is the death and destruction of America, and of course Israel. That's why for decades presidents have talked tough on Iran. They've talked tough. President Clinton said, quote, "I believe all the Western nations have an overriding interest in containing the threat posed by Iran," unquote. President Obama, he said, "I have stated that Iran will never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon," unquote. President Biden, quote, "We will not," let me say again, "we will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon." But it was President Trump who did more than talk. He acted, and it was long overdue. And his decisive action led to a weakened and vulnerable Iran that gives them no other choice than to come to the table, which they refused to do in good faith before. The president secured a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and despite of the temporary disruption this morning, we believe that will hold. Peace in the Middle East has never been closer within our grasp, and that is something that we should all embrace and applaud. And we were heartened to see even people on the other side of the aisle, right-thinking, common-sense folks, say that this was the right move. The ceasefire is fragile, but it is very real. I spoke to the president this morning right before Air Force One took off from the tarmac. He's headed over to the NATO meeting, as you all know. And we talked about his frustration with the temporary disruption and the ceasefire overnight. And he told me he had just spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu and encouraged him not to retaliate in any heavy way. And I think that request has been heeded. I told the president that I would immediately echo the same sentiment to my counterpart over there and my good friend, Speaker Ohana in the Knesset. I did that. I believe that Israel and the United States are locked arm in arm on this, and that unified front and that common goal is what is going to maintain peace. So I just want to say overall, this is America First policy in action. This is, as has been said here already this morning, the penultimate demonstration of peace through strength. This is what it means. But you got to have a strong commander-in-chief to make sure that happens. Regarding the presidential authority, now naturally, we've got some Democrats here on Capitol Hill who they have an allergic knee-jerk reaction to anything that President Trump does, no matter how noble and good. And they of course are opposed to his latest work to make Americans safer and bring peace in the Middle East, if you can imagine that. Some have even called for his impeachment over this. It's absolutely outrageous. It would be comical if it were not so serious and stupid. Let me be clear and be as clear as possible. The strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities were clearly within President Trump's Article 2 powers as commander-in-chief. It shouldn't even be in dispute. Allow me to put my constitutional law hat on for a moment, because that's what I used to do, because both the law and the precedent are important for everyone to understand here. This may answer a lot of questions that you might ask this morning. The framers of our Constitution never intended for the president to seek the approval of Congress every time he exercises his constitutional authority under Article 2 as commander-in-chief. Alexander Hamilton argued in Federalist number 70, just for one example, that, quote, "Energy in the executive is a leading character in the definition of good government. It is essential to the protection of the community against foreign attacks," unquote. This is why the framers did not explicitly set restrictions on the president when it comes to using military force. They understood something very practical about our matchless legislative body here in our Constitution. The way the Congress was set up, they knew it would be a deliberative body, and they knew that process by necessity would take time. And in an emergent and imminent situation, time is not something we always have the luxury of. And so they wanted, in moments of danger and conflict abroad, for one single hand of authority to have that authority to act decisively and effectively. Now we're hearing some talk about the War Powers Resolution. What is that exactly? Congress passed that legislation in 1973 under President Richard Nixon. It bars the use of armed forces in conflict beyond 60 days without congressional authorization or a formal declaration of war. A 30-day withdrawal period follows thereafter under the statute. It also requires that the President inform Congress within 48 hours of use of military force. Obviously, President Trump did that. Obviously, in the modern era with the 24-hour news cycle and social media, nothing goes by unnoticed. This might have made some sense in 1973, but I'm not even sure it was constitutional, and I'll tell you about that as well. Many respected constitutional experts argue that the War Powers Act is itself unconstitutional. I'm persuaded by that argument. They think it's a violation of the Article II powers of the Commander-in-Chief. I think that's right. If you look back at the Founders' intent, you read the Federalist Papers, you read the records of the Constitutional Convention, I think that is right. And many more scholars believe the President is correct to use this executive authority in exactly the manner that he did over the weekend. I am a jealous guardian of Congress's Article I authority. We are the defenders of it here, and we take it seriously, and I always will be. But exercising the authority to declare war isn't something we've done since World War II. And everybody in this room knows, since then we've had more than 125 military operations. From Korea and Vietnam to Iraq and Afghanistan. They have occurred without a declaration of war by Congress. Presidents of both parties have exercised that authority frequently. A few recent examples. President Biden ordered strikes on Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. President Obama launched an 8-month-long bombing campaign in Libya to oust Gaddafi. President Clinton initiated air patrols and air strikes in Bosnia and a bombing campaign in Yugoslavia. Every one of those actions were taken unilaterally and without prior authorization from Congress. The bottom line is the Commander-in-Chief is the President. The military reports to the President, and the person empowered to act on the nation's behalf is the President. The last few days have unfolded exactly as the law outlines and as history has demonstrated and as the framers of the Constitution intended. I'm convinced of that. Let me change subjects. We'll zoom in back to domestic affairs and the one big beautiful bill. I will say it's very relevant to the discussion about global affairs because one of the things, as you all know, that the big beautiful bill will accomplish is it will support our military funding. While congressional Democrats feign concern about the safety and well-being of U.S. service members, House Republicans are working to deliver legislation that actually accomplishes that and supports them. I think it's really important that amid this global threat landscape that we point out there's never been a better time for a piece of legislation, a generational, once-in-a-generation opportunity legislation like the One Big Beautiful Bill. This bill funds President Trump's Golden Dome to bolster long-range missile defense capabilities. How many of you know that's kind of important right now? It accelerates the modernization of our nuclear deterrent. Couldn't have a better time for that. And it revitalizes our defense industrial base. Here's a few specifics. $34 billion to expand the size and capabilities of our naval fleet. To $25 billion for the Golden Dome. $21 billion to restock America's arsenal of munitions and ramp up domestic production of rare earth and critical minerals. $13 billion for nuclear deterrence. $12 billion to enhance military readiness, among many other great provisions that I won't bore you with listing. It's exciting stuff. And the One Big Beautiful Bill is a generational investment in American military might. And we need to get it to President Trump's desk as soon as possible. I think we will. With that, I'll take a few questions. Chad.
Considering how much this bill has changed in the Senate, how are you going to be able to pivot and sell your members on a vastly different product so quickly? Before characterize what that's going to be like, the President says you need to be here this weekend. Are you going to keep members here without anything to vote on, with no clarity on when the Senate's going to send that across?
Yeah, first thing first, I don't think we can say it's a vastly different product. Don't prejudge it yet. We're still awaiting the final details. We've given space for the Senate to work. They're a separate chamber, of course. I've been emphasizing from the very beginning, this is a one-team approach, the House and Senate Republicans working together in tandem with the White House. There's no daylight between any of us on the ultimate goal and objective. When we set what you all thought were audacious deadlines in the early part of the year, and I said we would do our bill by Memorial Day, many of you smirked. I saw your faces. You laughed at me when I said that, but we beat it by 4 days, okay? When we said we would get the whole thing to the President's desk by July 4th, and that was our objective, many of you also rolled your eyes, but we are on target right now to do that very thing. So if the Senate acts accordingly, and they act according to what we expect right now, we work out the final details, they would get that passed maybe by Friday, Saturday. And I've told our members, we just had the big House Republican Conference meeting, the weekly meeting, and I said, keep your schedules flexible. July 4th is always a district work period, as is tradition, so everybody can go home and celebrate the 4th of July with their constituents and their families. But there's nothing more important that we should be involved in and can be involved in than getting the one big beautiful bill to the President's desk. So if the Senate does its work on the timeline that we expect, we will do our work as well. And I think everybody's ready for that. Yes, sir.
Have you taken any role in talking with some of the senators that have specific issues, say adding debt or Medicaid cuts, about what could get passed in the House?
Yeah, why do you think I look so tired? Yeah, I've been talking to individual senators ad nauseum and sharing with them the conversations and the deliberations and the negotiations and the conclusions that we reached together here in the House. Remembering that we worked on it for over a year on this side, and they've had to have a truncated work period of just a few weeks on this in reality. So they're going through the 5 stages of grief on their individual preferences, as we did over here, but again, we had longer time to process it. I remain, as I stand here at this podium, I remain very optimistic that there is not going to be a wide chasm between the two products, what the Senate produces and what we produce. We all know what the touch points are and the areas of the greatest concern. We've got to get the SALT negotiation number right. We've got to make sure the IRA subsidies are handled in an appropriate manner. You've got a number of provisions. We want to make sure that we hold by our commitment that we are not cutting Medicaid. The President has said that, and I've said that. We've all said that. We are strengthening the program for the people who are the most vulnerable populations who really rely upon that. You're talking about the disabled, the elderly, young pregnant women, for example. Those resources won't be available for those people who desperately need it and deserve it if young able-bodied men, for example, are on the program and not working. So we introduced a work requirement on the House side. It's wildly popular with the people because it follows common sense. If you're going to be on the public wagon and you're able, you should try to help pull it. And all we did was put in there, as you all know, a 20-hour work requirement per week, 20 hours. You guys work 80 hours, I'm sure, right? Give me a break. And they're complaining about that. You either have to be working, you have to be looking for a job in a job training program, or volunteering in your community. For heaven's sakes, do something constructive. That is something that everybody nods their head in agreement at a town hall and says, yes, do that. Why didn't we do it already, right? So what we've done is strengthen the program. I hope and believe, I pray, that the Senate will follow that same theme and not do anything that we couldn't pass on the other side over here.
Last question.
Second.
So you mentioned a couple of things as far as the ceasefire goes. You said that it's fragile. You also mentioned your opposition to the War Powers Act. I wanted to ask you, if the ceasefire isn't able to hold, do you think that you will take action to address concerns on the other side that Trump was unconstitutional in his actions, or perhaps think about repealing or altering the War Powers Act?
There's a lot there. Look, the reason the ceasefire is fragile is because you have Iran as one of the parties, and they have demonstrated for us over the decades that they are not to be trusted. You know, Ronald Reagan said, "Trust but verify." We're now in a posture where we verify and then trust, okay? And that's where we are. They have not been truthful over the years. They have not been reliable for their word, and they have in so many ways, they've been a very irrational actor on the world stage. So it's fragile just because of the parties involved. But what I would say about our role here in the Congress is that there were a couple of resolutions floated. One of our Republican colleagues, Thomas Massey, has got over 50 Democrats who had signed on to his War Powers Act resolution he wanted to bring to the floor. They were filing those resolutions as privilege resolutions, which means they must be heard within a certain number of days. It's 15 days of legislative business. And I don't have the power to stop a privilege resolution, but I did talk to Thomas, who is a colleague and a friend. I talked to him on the floor. We never agree these days. I'm not sure where his philosophy is coming from, but anyway, I talked to him on the floor last night and I said, listen, in light of the ceasefire, if the ceasefire holds, obviously you would agree that your War Powers Act resolution is now a moot point. And he said, yeah, it probably is. So we may not have to act upon that. I hope we don't, because I think it would be a terrible look, and it will not pass the House because it's inappropriate and it's not a proper use of the law anyway. The president has clearly fulfilled his responsibility under the War Powers Act, assuming that act was even constitutional. So, yeah. One last one. Last row.
On the subject of Thomas Massie, if he does face the primary challenger, as Trump was threatening to find, will you defend him in that primary?
That's the hardest question I have this morning. I'll be totally honest with you. Okay. Look, the speaker's job, my role with my party cap on, is I'm leader of my party here, and the speaker leads the incumbent protection program, right? That's what we call it. I got to make sure everybody gets reelected. I travel the country nonstop, relentlessly raising money to ensure that happens. But I certainly understand the president's frustration about the colleague you named, and he and I talk about that quite a bit. Can't quite understand what the rationale is, but if you're here and you're wearing one team's jersey, and every single time you vote with the other team, people begin to question what your motive is and what your philosophy is, and why you're so consistently opposed to the platform and the agenda of your party. So I'll leave it at that. I talked to Thomas about this very frankly, because I said he's a friend. I want him to come to his senses and work with the team, and I try to work with him every day to do that, as I do everybody here. So that's my answer this morning, okay? Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Members, today we're supposed to receive a classified briefing from the Trump administration, but clearly the chaos and the confusion coming out of the White House made that impossible. It is completely unacceptable that Congress has not been briefed on this in a timely fashion. We need evidence, we need details, and we need to know them now. There are a number of outstanding questions, including whether this attack achieved the administration's stated goals. Launching an attack without congressional authorization is wrong. Launching a potentially unsuccessful attack without congressional authorization would be an administration-defining failure. And this is a defining week for the Trump presidency. He has asked Republicans to put the unpopular One Big Ugly Bill on his desk by July 4th so that he can celebrate Independence Day by throwing 16 million people off of their health insurance to pay for billionaire tax breaks that explode the deficit by over $3 trillion. And now he's putting American troops in harm's way in the Middle East after promising that he'd restore peace. The American people want a steady hand at the wheel and to fight back. I'm proud to launch the House Democratic Caucus National Security Task Force, co-chaired by Representatives Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, and Derek Tran. And we want to thank co-chair Mikey Sherrill, who can't be with us here today. The members leading this task force will draw on their patriotism, expertise, and commitment to service by providing the leadership that Donald Trump and the rubber stamp Republicans lack the courage and moral clarity to deliver. Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. I'm pleased we're joined today by veterans Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, and Derek Tran. Like Chairman Aguilar said, it is completely unacceptable that the administration is unwilling to brief the House of Representatives on the strikes in Iran. It has been a long-standing bipartisan goal of both Democratic and Republican administrations to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. The Iranian regime is a theocratic, autocratic regime. If they had nuclear weapons, they could launch them at U.S. bases, U.S. military interests, and at Israel. And we have to make sure this regime never acquires a nuclear weapon. At the same time, I believe the Constitution means what it says. Only Congress has the power to declare war. I publicly stated at the time that Obama needed congressional authorization to strike Syria. I believe Trump needs congressional authorization to strike Iran. My view of the Constitution does not change based on what party the president happens to belong to. Now, there's some other news that happened today, including that consumer sentiment declined again. And what we know is that the economic policies of Donald Trump and the Republicans are harming Americans, and the American people know it. Inflation has increased, grocery prices have increased, people are having difficulty making ends meet, and now we have this huge, big, ugly bill that's going to cut healthcare for millions and millions of Americans in service of tax breaks for billionaires. We asked the Republican Senate and House Republicans to vote no. And with that, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Representative Jason Crow, who served our country in combat prior to joining Congress.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar, Vice Chairman Liu, and my fellow co-chairs of the House Democratic National Security Task Force, Derek Tran and Maggie Goodlander. I'm Jason Crow from Colorado. And even though I'm a member of Congress now, I view this issue, like many national security issues, more through my eyes as a former Army Ranger and paratrooper and combat veteran than just as a member of Congress. I deployed 3 times to Iraq and Afghanistan in my early and mid-20s. And I know the true costs of war. I know what happens when unaccountable elites in comfortable air-conditioned offices in Washington pound their chests, saber rattle, and then send somebody else to go off and do the tough work. Because it's people that I grew up with, working class kids from around the country and from the middle of the country, from small towns that people in Washington don't pay attention to, that have to go out and carry out that tough talk. So I take it pretty personally when an elite like Donald Trump makes a cavalier decision without thought, without engagement with Congress, to potentially pull us in to another long-term endless conflict in the Middle East. Because don't get us wrong, there is no appetite in America for the United States to be pulled in to another decades-long conflict in the Middle East. So there's a lot of talk about Congress and why Congress should be involved. A lot of discussion about the Constitution, a lot of discussion about war powers, and I just want to talk about why that should matter to Americans. You know, of course the Constitution matters, and of course obeying the rule of law matters. But let's drill down into that for just one moment. We spent 20 years in $3 trillion and over 6,000 American troop lives fighting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that should have ended much, much sooner and been far less costly than they were. How did that happen? Well, it happened in large part because there was just one vote. The entirety of those wars, one vote in one formal debate in Congress. And then, out of sight, out of mind. Congress is an essential part of this. That is what the framers of the Constitution envisioned, that the people closest to the American people, that have to go home every weekend and stand in high school auditoriums, in gyms, in Rotary clubs, and Friday night fish fries across America, and be held accountable and say why we should spend taxpayer dollars and send our men and women to someplace around the world into conflict, why we should do that, and to be accountable for it in real time. That's why the involvement of Congress matters. Because nobody will ever tell me that things would have been different in Iraq and Afghanistan had we actually had that debate, had we actually pushed that accountability. We know it would have been. So Congress needs to step up. I know the House Democrats are ready to step up. We're already leading to reinsert ourselves into matters of war and peace. It's time for the Republicans to step up too and say enough is enough. We have an independent constitutional obligation to support our military, to support our troops, and to discharge our obligations under the Constitution, regardless of what Donald Trump says. We are not asking them to storm the beaches of Normandy or to give their lives for this country. We are asking them to step up and fulfill their constitutional obligations. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the intrepid whip of the House Democrats, Catherine Clark from Massachusetts.
Thank you so much, Congressman Crow, and thank you for your service to our country, both your military service and your service, and to all of you. And thank you to our chairman and vice chairman for pulling this together. Our message today is clear. The Constitution is not a document of convenience. It is there to guarantee that there is accountability because it is the people's voice of this country. It is American families who are feeling every day that it is hard to get ahead, who need to be informed of when this country is going to have military strikes and go to war. And that is where representative government comes in. That is the design. That as members of Congress, we are here representing our districts and the voice of the American people. So when we have a president and an administration and now a Republican party in Congress that has decided the American people are not entitled to know anything. It is a trust us, we are doing what we're doing. You are just here to pay the taxes while we debate these things internally without your representatives involved. That is an outrage and an insult to families at home, who at this time where 60% of American families are feeling they can't provide the basics while we are debating a GOP bill that wants to take away health care from 16 million Americans, that wants to take away food programs, strip funding from veterans' benefits. The audacity of then coming forward and saying, on top of all that, we feel that you are not entitled to the basic information around our national security and such profound decisions about whether to go to war or not. This is far beyond a briefing and what day it will be held. It is the fact that we have been demanding information on behalf of American families, of American veterans, of those who are in active duty and their families who deserve answers on what our country is committing as far as foreign action and why. Thank you.
Next, co-chair Maggie Goodlander.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to our leadership and to my colleagues who are part of this task force, which I'm really proud to be part of. I represent the live free or die state of New Hampshire here in Congress, and we've got freedom-loving patriots right here on this podium who believe deeply in our mission and our role. And what I'd say is I'm about to turn it over to Derek Tran, who, like my dad, joined the military at age 18. My dad, Ted, always said he got his education in the United States Navy, and so did I. I really did. I served 11 years as an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve. I learned in the Navy that and saw firsthand that the United States of America has brutal and determined enemies all across the world, including in Iran. I saw firsthand how our patriotic service members, when they take an oath to this document, I bring my Constitution with me everywhere I go in this job because it's a useful document to have these days for questions big and small. When they take an oath to this, they mean it. And I also learned in the Navy firsthand why our framers were really smart to give Congress a central role in American national security and in matters of war and peace, because there are no more consequential decisions than can be made. What we see today is an administration that is completely ignoring the role of Congress in matters of war and peace, and it's having real consequences. It's been said. We just came back. I was pounding the pavement all across New Hampshire. I heard from the families of service members who were asking basic questions that this administration should be answering to the American people about why we went ahead and conducted a military strike without congressional authorization, what the impact of that strike was. What damage did it do to Iran's nuclear program and their nuclear industrial base? And what is the plan now? This is why Congress has got a role in questions of war and peace, and why this administration is going to have to answer to us. I'm really proud to be in this effort alongside all of you, and delighted to turn it over to my colleague and Army veteran, I'll allow it, go Navy, Derek Tran.
Thank you so much, Rep. Goodlander. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you especially to my colleagues with whom I am so proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with. I joined the Army Reserves when I was 18 years old. I walked into that recruitment office because I was committed to giving back to the country that has given me so much. My parents fled a communist dictatorship and came to the United States seeking the freedom and democracy that define the core of our national values. I brought that background with me to Congress, and I'm so proud to lend my voice as a leader of the House Democratic Caucus on the National Security Task Force. Just this week, we learned in terrifying detail just how important our voices are at this critical moment. Iran and its proxies pose a serious threat to our nation, and American people are looking for measured, steady leadership to protect our national security. They're not seeing it from President Trump. They're not seeing it from congressional Republicans who refuse to hold this president accountable. I am proud to stand with my colleagues today to urge a stronger, more stable approach to our national security. We are committed to keeping our service members safe. We are committed to protecting U.S. global leadership, and we don't want our country dragged into another reckless war. It is critical that we exhaust all diplomatic options to de-escalate this conflict, because we do not want more of our soldiers put in harm's way. The United States has been the sole global superpower for decades, not only because of our military might, but because of our values, our adherence to the Constitution, and our respect to the rule of law. We're here today because we refuse to stand by while this legacy is under threat. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it back to our chairman for questions.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, colleagues. Questions? Nick?
Congressman Al Green's resolution is coming up on the floor. Do you expect Democratic leadership to
I anticipate that Democrats will vote to table this, and I'll be among them voting to table it. Yeah.
You mentioned at the top, Chairman, that Donald Trump wants to get the bill on his desk by July 4th so that he can celebrate Independence Day by throwing 15 million people onto health insurance. How will House Democrats, you all have done days of action during recesses, you've held press conferences, had different types of events. As this thing gets closer to the Senate taking it up and potentially coming back to the House, what can Americans expect to see from House Democrats as this gets down to the wire on pushing back against the SNAP cuts, the Medicaid cuts, within the context of this Iran-Israel conflict? You all are balancing a lot of different kind of walking and chewing gum at the same time. What can folks expect in this fight against the bill as it comes back?
All of this is, as my colleague said, all of this is about the American people. You know, their safety and security is front of mind, whether it's keeping them out of harm's way and protecting their national security or looking out for their health and safety. All of that fits within the same theme, and that is the focus of House Democrats, is how do we make lives better for folks in our community. But we're not going to be distracted. We're not going to take our eye off the ball. The Senate is going to do whatever the Senate has to do, but we know that this bill is coming back at some point. We can't control when that happens, but as we get closer to that, we will use our voices and we will be very clear with the American public, guided by, and this shocks our Republican colleagues, guided by the facts, guided by the CBO saying this is going to kick 16 million people off of their health insurance, guided by the nonpartisan analysis that says this is going to put a $4 trillion hole in the deficit. Those are things that House Democrats will continue to amplify. And what that means to folks in our community is this means people are going to lose their health care. This means hospitals are going to close. That's what's at stake, and House Democrats are going to continue to use every tool we can. If we're here over the next intervening days or whatever that holds, we're going to make our voices heard back home and across this country using our voices and getting the word out. Vice Chairman.
So, again, this big, ugly bill is the largest healthcare cut in U.S. history. And according to the facts, as Chairman Aguilar laid them out, 16 million people are going to lose their health care. And why? Why are we doing this? Tax breaks for billionaires. That's literally what the bill does. And the more the American people find out about the bill, the more they dislike it. Even now, this bill is 21 points under water, a shockingly low result, only matched by Donald Trump's polling approval, which the latest AP poll had him at 21 points underwater, with 60% disapproving of Trump's job performance. So what Trump Republicans are doing is not popular, and the more American people find out, the more they dislike it.
Thank you. As far as the briefing on Iran that was supposed to be this afternoon, could you just walk us through any conversations that you've had with Republican leadership about this briefing and why they say it was canceled, whether there's any plans to hold it on a date in the future?
I don't have anything that isn't public. I read it on X as well, just like everybody else. I assume that this will, come up in the next few days, but I find it incredibly frustrating and difficult that we can't get the answers to our questions. Are our service members in harm's way? Was this a successful mission? Where is the enriched uranium? These are all fairly straightforward questions, and Congress deserves answers. This isn't a partisan issue. I hope we get answers to those questions. We have no idea on the timing. Representative Crow.
I think it's really important to underscore that the president, any president, has self-defense authority under Article 2 of the Constitution. But to meet that threshold, you have to show that there was an imminent risk of attack against Americans or U.S. facilities. That's the standard. As a member of the Armed Services Committee and the House Intelligence Committee, I have not seen any evidence leading up to the attack that there was an imminent risk to Americans or to U.S. facilities to meet that threshold. So the administration has to answer for that. And that's why it's really important we get answers quickly, because this is the type of situation that could spin out of control very rapidly.
Just to follow up on Nick's question about the impeachment motion to table today, obviously the Democrats have been very united against pushing back the big beautiful bill. Several other issues, you have shown a unified force on issues like this as it relates to impeachment. Is it unhelpful for your members to come forward and put an issue on the table like impeachment that divides the caucus?
Members are going to represent their constituents and their communities. Members have gone back home. They've had town halls. They've heard from their constituents. They bring back those ideas and those interests every week. That is the nature of this place. So at this time, at this moment, we are focusing on what this big, ugly bill is going to do. I think anything outside of that is a distraction, because this is the most important thing that we can focus on. And so that's what we plan to do in the next days that we're here, and that's what I expect members to carry forward.
Thank you. So these past couple of days, Democrats have been calling on the White House and Republicans in general to disclose more information about these strikes. But in terms of the actual policy of the U.S. striking Iran, where does House Democratic leadership stand? What is the official stance? And also, are you guys going to be giving members talking points with regards to policy?
Well, we will lean on our committees of jurisdiction, but also the Democratic Caucus National Security Task Force that you see some of the members behind us. As you saw, the War Powers Resolution introduced by ranking members Meeks, Adam Smith, and Jim Himes. Those are going to be the committees of jurisdiction that guide us on these issues. What I can tell you is, I just echo what Representative Crow mentioned. The president has Article 2 authority, but he needs to discuss that with us. If there is an imminent threat to the United States, the Gang of Eight needs to be read in on that. There was not a Gang of Eight meeting prior to this, prior to the bombing. So those are concerns that we have. We respect and can appreciate the separation of powers. We understand that even when the president doesn't respect Article 1, they should know that we respect Article 2. But that still means that there is a process. We need to follow that process and ensure healthy communication, especially when it comes to national security interests that affect our troops abroad. Mike?
On the war powers question, Mr. Liu, you mentioned Syria and Obama and those strikes that happened without congressional approval. Speaker Johnson, a few hours ago, ticked off a longer list of examples of Democratic administrations taking similar steps. Doesn't that kind of undermine your argument that, hey, look at these big bad Republicans violating the Constitution with these strikes when Democratic administrations have done something?
Yeah. Just because it was wrong then doesn't mean it's not wrong now. The Constitution is the Constitution, and it says only Congress has the power to declare war. And it's been a bipartisan problem with Congress ceding way too much power to the executive branch. And if you look at what J.D. Vance is saying, it's pretty extreme. He's basically saying the president can take action because it deals with nuclear proliferation. Well, if you take that argument, then that would mean any U.S. president could just strike Russia or China or North Korea without congressional approval. That's just insane. And so we're reasserting Congress's role on the Constitution. Again, just read it. It's pretty clear. Only Congress has the power to declare war.
Yeah. On the AUMF question and the war powers question, listen, if you give somebody a credit card, they're going to use it, right? Well, what's happened is that Congress gave the presidency, Democrat presidents and Republican presidents decades ago, a credit card, but the bill has to be paid by the American people, right? So it's actually Congress's responsibility now to step up and to take it back. Right, because it's been used and abused for too long by too many different people, right? The difference here is that House Democrats take that seriously. We're stepping up to do something about it. And in the absence of leadership by the Republicans who control the House of Representatives and the Senate, once again, House Democrats are stepping up to lead and to make the tough decisions to do the right thing so the American people don't have to foot the bill for reckless misadventures and foreign policy failures. That's the difference. But I think a lot of this discussion around war powers and authorizations for use of military force, let's not forget what we're trying to achieve here. Right? House Democrats know the danger that Iran poses to the world. We know the danger that Iran poses to American troops. I know. I was in Iraq when Iran was training and equipping its militias and blowing up my units and the people that I served with. We understand that it's a state sponsor of terror and one of the more malignant regimes in the world. So we want to do something about it, but we want to do something that is permanent and is verifiable. We understand you cannot bomb your way out of this. It has to be permanent and it has to be verifiable. And that will only be done at a negotiating table when we get back to an agreement similar but different from the one that Donald Trump tore up. You can't bomb your way out of this.
Last question, PK.
I guess to follow up, though, you had Democratic control in 21 and 22, and there was a sort of effort at trying to do some sort of AUMF. It went nowhere. Do you all regret you've had moments in the past with Democratic presidents where there was an ability to do something and you had
What we can handle is what's in front of us today. We can write books and fill your column inches with regrets under this dome. We'll save that for other days. But what is in front of us today is, are we going to stand up for our constitutional authorities? Are we going to protect the role that Congress has here? Are we going to look out for American service members by asking tough questions? That's our role. And like the vice chair said, that should not just be when you disagree with the administration or when you have a different political party from the administration. If we're truly going to do the people's business here, we need to ask those tough questions, and we need to wait till the winds line up and the stars align and we can get something done. That part is unfortunate. Maybe we've missed a few opportunities, but that doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye right now. It doesn't mean that we just let Donald Trump walk all over us. It means that we stand up for our authority and speak up on behalf of our constituents at every opportunity. Thank you.